Shooting a feature film seems to increasingly present new challenges. One of the greatest challenges is to be able to work very efficiently, very quickly, but you have to deliver a very high standard of work. To do that, you've got to have reliable units that are versatile.
There are two main looks for this film. We achieve this using a lot of the ProPhoto Pro panels to give us a great moonlight look, so around about 8,000 Kelvin with a little bit of cyan, as well as a 5,600 Kelvin daylight look.
I've had an incredible experience on the Butler and a great experience working with ProPhoto. We've created an aesthetic that I'm really proud of, and we've done it on a really tight schedule, and ProPhoto has been there to help us deliver that.
I plan to use them in every production going forward.
Hi everyone, let me start the slide up. Thanks for coming. So I'm very glad to host this conversation on the importance of color in the eye of a cinematographer. I'm Daphne, I work for FilmLight. For those who don't know us, we produce high-end tools for colorists from pre-production to post-production. And today I have the real pleasure of speaking with cinematographer Ula Pontikos, BSC. Bonjour.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for having me, Daphne.
So Ula today will share with us her approach to color and how she uses it to shape mood and narrative across her filmography. But before discussing your work, I'd like to briefly introduce you. So, Ula, you are an award-winning cinematographer, celebrated for your emotionally resonant storytelling and technical mastery, with credits spanning film and high-end television. Your work includes Weekend, which earned you a BBC Film Rising Star recognition, the TV series also Russian Doll, for which you received an Emmy and ASC nomination for your cinematography. And most recently, you worked on the upcoming series Blade Runner 2099, releasing later this year. Yeah, I don't know if there is a date, but and your latest feature, The Man in My Basement, directed by Nadia Latif, which premiered at TIFF. So one thing I really like about your work is that beyond cinematography, you're also a talented photographer. I said I will mention it, which probably influence your approach to light, composition, color. So yeah, I found it very interesting. And finally, I just want to add that you are originally from Poland, and you're a graduate of the NFTS school in London, and also a recipient of the Sue Gibson BSC Award. Welcome, Ula. It's wonderful to have you there. So, to start things off, can you tell us at what point in your career did you start getting interested by color?
So, I used to study in Ravensbourne University, and there was a 2-year course in professional broadcasting. And what I haven't realized, I didn't really know what to do. But what I haven't realized, the color was very much part of at the time, it was sort of late 90s, beginning of 2000, not many people talk about color or color theory. And obviously coming from Poland, not only I was aware of the Decalogue and Kieślowski's work, but free color, red, white, and blue came out, and obviously blue was just such a incredible piece of work.
My favorite one.
And I got really fascinated by work of Kieślowski with Ijak. And in a way, I remember bought my first book about color theory and how colors actually influence emotions, and then bit by bit, I actually started doing dissertation and finding out more that there was no shot deck at the time, finding more and more influence of their work together, which I think one of my dissertations, it wasn't very good, but one of my dissertation was about how color influenced Kieślowski's work. And it's interesting, Daphne has put together this montage and this mosaic. And actually, you know, I really believe that the art which one has consumed and go and see is very much stays in our psyche, in the back of our minds.
Okay, brilliant. I didn't even know you did a dissertation around this. How do you like to collaborate usually with a colorist, and at which stage do you prefer to involve them?
So I was extremely lucky to work with incredible colorists. I worked with Andrew Daniel, Asa Shaw, Greg Fisher, and Simone Grattatola. They were really incredible. And I normally try to bring colorists from the beginning of the project. So with my last project, it's probably the easier to talk about The Man in My Basement, because the director, Nadia Latif, and I were on the same page with trying to figure out how this film is going to look like. And Nadia and I talked about the choices of the colorist. Obviously, there is a lot of other works around the funding, and so we had to obey with a certain level of restrictions we had to have. And Simone just fitted every single brief. And I think was part of the reason of sort of getting Nadia on board and having her to be this collaborator, which we actually had and become together, is to make sure that we get the colorist from a get-go. So Simone was very much part of building the look of the show. And I think it's something which I really insist on from the beginning of the production. We build the lot for the show, and we sort of get them. You know, we the colorists we work with, we build, we talk about the project, we talk about the mood of it, we do the test, very careful test with the production and costume design and the locations, and we build a lot based on it. And normally I do one lot, except for Russian Doll, which we're going to talk about later, but I built one lot for the show, and that lot will stay. We tweak. And then maybe for a week, we had to tweak. We sort of wanted more warmer look, and then decided that that's not the look we're going to go for. So we tweaked a lot with Simone, and that became our show lot.
So you don't necessarily push to have the dailies closest to the final grade. You like to have a bit of option for the post. So you do like a kind of light lot, would you say?
Yeah, I do the show lot. So obviously the scene to scene, sort of it's the light. And Greg Fisher sort of really taught me to be very. Greg and I did 2 projects together. We did Russian Doll and the project, the TV drama called 3 Women. And Greg taught me to never adjust the lot, which at the beginning I didn't listen to. And then it was pandemic. We did lots of conversations, and he was telling me off until I learned my lesson, and I do not adjust my lot much.
And you did mention to me last time that you liked your dailies sometimes a bit darker?
Yeah, so I think the tendency is that, and this is part of, I've learned my lesson hard way, sometimes underexposed in the past. So it's the tendency. I work when I get rushed. We all get rushed, especially on TV dramas. And I tend to underexpose then. So the way how I used to build the lots, I made them slightly darker just to fit my own sort of working methodology. I think the more experienced I become, the sort of that darkness is not necessary. Now I kind of, feel very comfortable with lighting, but we all know we're learning, and we make a lot of mistakes. And I think part of the way of the learning process is to knowing how to protect yourself, and underexposure was something which I used to do before, and the way around it to keep a healthy negative is to just simply make the lot darker at that time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And just to go back on The Man on My Basement, so The Man on My Basement, it's a movie with actor Corey Hawkins and William Dafoe. It's a thriller which is deeply psychological and emotionally charged, yet you chose a warm orange palette to build tension, which I found very interesting and atypical, I would say. Can you tell us more about that decision? But actually, let me show the clip. So we will see it. You want to talk over the clip?
Yeah, so the clip is something what I've done for the camera image, and Mandy Walker asked me...
Can we switch off the light? Sorry.
Yeah, I might talk about it in a minute.
I can switch off the audio.
Probation's over in 2 days, and then you out of here. I don't want the extra money, so you can keep it.
We have a deal. Why am I here? Why do I want to be here? Why do I feel I should be in a cage? It's suicide too. So I kept my word and killed his wife and son.
Stop. You gotta go.
I can't leave. A man once paid me to give a 9-month-old girl to his dog. He wanted to know if the dog's true nature would kick in, and he paid me a large sum to make it happen. Have you ever watched a child being torn apart?
I don't believe you. Nobody could do something like that.
Who? Him? Me? Her? The mother? She had 13 other children, all of them starving. The sale of one meant the survival of the rest.
You bought a baby?
How many lives have you saved, Charles? I've saved thousands. Can't screw that church thing off, can you? I'm just a tool, Charles. All the possibility of the world exists without me.
It's a
Very nice clip.
It's a very dark story. I think Mandy Walker asked me to prepare something for the camera images, how art influenced cinematography, and in a way, I sort of reverse engineered this to kind of compare the painting which I was thinking about, but not the painting, to the presentation. But actually what I realized is, I remember Nadia during the BSC show said, you know, how much I love the fact that we changed the petrol station, the gas station, to be green. And then I found my pitch document for her of like the things I was thinking about at the time where I was reading The Man in My Basement, and actually that painting of Hopper in a petrol station was there. And it was there very much from the beginning of the time where I was thinking about the show. So I started thinking about how much art actually influenced us and how much we have things deep buried inside. And the more interviews I was doing about The Man in My Basement, I realized that there is just so much, how much art actually influenced our color theory and the lighting ratios and just the mood of the show we're investing in, we're lighting.
Yeah, because so I haven't seen the movie and I will watch it very soon. But from my understanding, the hero, there's like a contrast between his internal chaos that you translate into like warm color, and then you have this harsh reality that we see with the scene with William Dafoe, where it's like harsh white. So those choices, is it something you decided, or you decided with Nadia?
So, I mean, it's interesting because I think that part of the making a movie is that you sort of deconstruct it into sort of singular pieces. So it's really until you've got all the pieces together with the sound and the music, you realize and watch the film for the first time and realize how much effort and micro obsessions one have about building this final look. So when one watches The Man in My Basement, I realize when I was watching it at TIFF is that every lighting setup in the house looked different. And Nadia and I were talking about the right mood of the right scene. So we've actually changed. We wanted the film to have its own sort of tapestry of mood, emotions, and sort of where to echo Charles's the main protagonist inner world, or sort of be in opposition to it. And I think that was really important part of the sort of sub-storytelling. And then there is obviously a whole story in the basement which is about the light, because Charles denies Ernest and Bennett the light bulb. So there was a progression of that, and it gets to the point where things just get quite escalated and quite theatrical. Nadia's work comes from theater. So there is a lot of her gaze, obviously, put into her choices of blocking and the editing. And I always repeat that filmmaking is really a editor's director medium. And I think what we can do as cinematographer, as colorist, is to bring this sort of extra layer of emotion, of darkness and lightness, and bring the sort of subliminal storytelling, emotional storytelling, aside from the camera work and the movement.
Very nice. And now I would like to talk about your TV series, Three Women. It is an intimate, haunting portrayal of American female desire. In this project, I find your work more ethereal. Oh, I have lots of difficulty with this word. Ethereal? Airy?
Ethereal.
You get me. And it's quite unusual compared to the rest of your work. Can you tell us how you approach the grade on that show?
So that was done with Greg Fisher, really incredible colorist I was working with. And the story is about, it's called Three Women, but the story is about 4 women. And it's based on real women. Gia was really a reinterpretation of the writer Lisa Taddeo, and her relationship with her to-be husband and her first child, and the sort of the world around how they got together. And then there was a story of Maggie, Lena, and and we are, it was sort of, what we're trying to do within this show is to bring more of a internal side, because it wasn't a reality. These women sort of live within the world of desire and fantasy, and where and how that internal world work with their everyday lives. So we brought over a lot of creaminess and color. It was all justified. We had a lot of landscapes, and it was really beautiful project to be working on. We filmed it mainly in upstate New York. Again, we really built one lot, and we just used different light schemes for different moods, sort of to bring it all together. Maggie naturally landed into sort of a bit of a colder look, but we were just trying to sort of show them how similar they are and also how different. So taking this whole project on basis, and I'm very lucky to have Bonnie here, who also Bonnie and I met. This is what I love about this industry. It's like we met because we had so many units and so many other stuff to do. It was a quite actually big show for what it was. Bonnie came to Hawaii, and we met first time on the phone, and now she's here, and we actually struck a really beautiful friendship. We've run an aperture committee together for the academy, where we found the young cinematographers to pitch them for being invited to Oscars voting and being a member, and yeah, that's just something completely different, but I think we're so lucky to be within this community.
Absolutely. I'd like to now talk about the acclaimed Netflix series Russian Doll, which is pretty. You did actually you shot season 2, which is pretty different from season 1. Season 1, the main character Nadia, she repeatedly dies and relives the same night over and over again. Rather than in season 2, it's more like about time traveling. I think Nadia is more like jumping into time. Let me show you actually, because we did some mosaic. So there's the 40s, the 60s, the 80s, and modern time. So
So
tell us more about it.
So I remember on the 27th of December in 2019, I get a phone call, a Zoom call, which I had to participate with Natasha Lyon, and she refuses to send me the script, but she decided that she's going to pitch me the project together with other people who I didn't know who they were at the time. And she was telling me the project, and she talked about this woman who one day she wakes up and she is her mother, and she's her mother back in time in 80s whilst being pregnant with her, the child. So I was like, okay, this is great. And then she explains me the story more and more. And then she says, well, but the time gets really granular, and then it sort of falls apart. And then when you start zooming in, we are going to be sort of in no time. I was like, okay, this is really strange. But I'm reading this book about the Order of Time by Carlo Rovielli. Is that based perhaps on this? This sounded me of this idea. And there was a physicist, Italian physicist, Carlo Rovielli, who I really love, and I just happened to be reading his book and trying to understand entropy, which I still don't, and it was quite interesting because all Nadia said is that from a wild card I become a front runner. And then I realized that the whole essence of the film is based on Carlo Rovielli in Order of Time. Like the everything. And then she had another book called I'm a Strange Loop, which I will, Douglas Hofstadter, who I will never try to analyze what the heck I have read, but it's a brilliant book. I highly recommend if you want to be tripping, on mathematics and concepts of language. But in case of color, it was really interesting project. It's probably the first time when I had 4 different lights built in. Because there was a modern time, we used lights lenses for that. It was we wanted to make a homage for Chris Teague look. They were beautiful lenses. They really offset very nicely with what we end up with Ed Lachman's lenses, which actually no idea how end up on my. Test. We were shooting that. We were shooting the test. I was asking for super boltars, but Ari thankfully ignored me, and then they gave me boltars, which are 1930s lenses, and they were owned by Ed Lachman. So Ed Lachman and I become friends, and that was a really quite amazing project. We actually shot on boltars, super boltars, and Leica lenses. Had 4 different looks, and you are about to see a favorite clip from the show, which is sort of like the embodiment of no time.
About this, it's a striking scene. It's a DMT scene where the color choice are quite unconventional. But let me play it first, and we can switch off the light. Very nice scene. So yeah, talk it through those atypical color choices, I would say. Those purple, the green, I found it very interesting.
So I just want to, because that's sort of like a, that end up in, I think, episode 5, but I think it would be good to sort of see how we landed in the whole look of Russian Doll. So unfortunately, I didn't use I stayed with the lenses, but I used a different camera package. It's something what I felt more familiar. We used Sony Venice, which I shot quite a lot on before, and I felt that coloristically I aligned with them, with that camera for the show. And I think it took us a long time to sort of get the right decisions into different looks. So we roughly matched the look from the warmness of season 1 for the modern time. And then we sort of decided about, if we could just go through, we decided about different color schemes for 80s. So for example, this one, I found photographs, there was some Bruce Webb, but there were a lot of photographs about New York in 80s, and there was a certain level of how the cyan and fluorescent has been working. So that was very much the influence within the look of the show. And obviously we had a lot of Natasha is very heavily influenced by Martin Scorsese and all his work in New York. But we use a lot of stills photography, and I always try to sort of veer away necessarily from the film work, because I think the tendency of us copying each other is quite great, and I love it, and I admire so many cinematographers, but I think it's quite good to also look at references of the time where you're trying to build the look from, and the sort of really find the texture and the grittiness and the way how the red reacts. So we had a lot of tube scenes, and that sort of fluorescent light very much influenced that side. And then we went to I think forward. Before. So then 60s, I think I started in Gordon Parks, and then it sort of ended up in a slightly less saturated way. I think 60s sort of end up, I think in comparison, there was the one period which we really wasn't so developed within the story. We shot it quite late, so that sort of look got developed slightly later. I think initially it was much more saturated, and I think I decided that probably having less saturation worked better for the story. And then just want to show the 40s. There was a lot of magenta, and magenta is a sort of very difficult color for me. I think once I got traumatized with a bad grade which has a lot of magenta, so now I sort of don't like it. But this is the way how we embrace it, and that all started with 2-strip Technicolor look, which had this sort of incredible green and magenta side. The magenta kind of stayed, and the green becomes sort of more blue, just to tie it in all together, because I think what was really quite tricky within the Russian Doll is that the time travel starts from scene to scene. So there was a portal, which was a subway, and the door comes in, and it was really important for us to have a certain level of I think it was really important not to alienate the audience. So you feel part of the storytelling, but you do feel subliminally that change of the world does happen. But also, once we sell that story in the first couple of minutes, I think that everyone is sort of fairly flexible with understanding the visual language. And I think the key is to make this modern to 80s really quite good.
And how does it work with streaming platforms such as Netflix? I mean, this is season 2, but I have the tendency to think that they like to have a consistent look across all seasons. Yeah,
we were really lucky. I think the Russian Doll for a start was a sort of Paramount and Netflix child, so we really didn't, and also pandemic happened. So no one really cared for us for a very long time.
Lucky.
But I think, I'm not quite sure. I think within an idea, this Russian Doll, it's so conceptual, especially the season 2. The season 1 was conceptual, but season 2, sort of with all the time travel and a mother, a child being a mother whilst being pregnant with herself, like how do you explain it to anybody? So we were lucky. We were sort of, and when we were feeding dailies within Netflix, they just they were on board. I think it's obviously, in a way, a lot to do with cinematography and how we deliver the dailies, but also, with Natasha and Alex Bueno. Natasha Leon directed some episodes, and Alex Bueno directed others. And I think they were very, very good at communicating what we were trying to do, and I'm sure that also has an incredible effect on it. And we just had a really good time. Not the pandemic, but the after.
Okay, great. So I know you wanted me to show a clip you were proud of, mainly because also, because there's lots of students in the room today, and you told me that it was a good example of how to work a low budget project. So let's watch the music video. So it's
an excerpt from music video, which we did for about £10,000, I think, at the time.
Okay, and it's King Cruel. So yeah, on a low budget project like this, how do you approach color grading?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's. I think by now I have an array of LUTs. Ironically, most of them, or a lot of them, are still Greg Fisher's LUTs, and I think that I'm not quite sure whether that one. I'm not actually sure whether that one was Greg's or not, but I think it's, they all become a different LUTs, and sometimes I use them for my other projects, and I think that's really good. And I think part of the reason why I like using them, obviously, is that I know how to expose, and I know what I can get away with, and how the highlights and the contrast work. And I think at that time I was still adjusting my LUT, which I'm not doing now anymore. I don't know whether he's here, but I think I love this music video because this is done on such a small budget. We really had few coolie lights and a bar, and rest of it was sort of created within the lighting, sort of, the moods of it. But there was just such a minimalist way of approaching, and the whole music video really starts with this beautiful set design, which is a carbon box, and you sort of come into that hotel room, and that was the only thing which has been actually built, and rest of it was sort of like amalgamation of animations and miniature work, which sort of got put together. And again, with CC Wade, who are the directors, color was very important. So we sort of looked through the references, and and build something together to end up with this.
Very nice. And you did tell me that you felt it was very you, this project.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of the music videos which I really come back to and with great fondness.
Okay, nice. So I would like to talk about skin tones because skin tones are a very important aspect of color grading. You did a commercial, a L'Oreal commercial, which is very interesting in terms of skin tone. I mean, all of it. So let's watch it.
A guy in year 10 came up to me, pointing his fingers at me, laughing, saying, "Look at them spots on your face."
They mocked me, they called me a pirate and said I need an eye patch.
I actually started to accepting myself the way I am.
Just think that becoming a mother has taught me that I wouldn't ever want my child to be ashamed of who they are.
Yes, those clips are cut brutally. Should have done a fade. Okay, so tell me, how do you approach skin tones? I mean, it's very interesting because that's lots of different type of skin tones, so I guess it's quite challenging.
I mean, I think, I mean, aside from the color theory and how we work with colorists, we really are photographing people, and it's all about trying to make sure that side of, that things are, for me, skin tones are really important. I don't always have an opportunity to work with colorists personally. A lot of commercial work, we sort of land within a color where the director or the client sort of takes over. But this was one of the projects Sophie Abrat and I worked with colorist called George Kay. And he's a great in black-eyed colorist and skin tones, especially for Sophie, who is a stills photographer. Skin tones are really important. The stories about skin and imperfections and the beauty of it. And I think, but that the reason why I thought it was an interesting project to talk about is because that sort of philosophy of a skin tone I really try to take as much as I can to every project. And skin tones is it's the very thing which I think, we are looking at people's faces, telling us emotional things. And I think, aside from what being told, is also what we're seeing is really important. And I think to keeping to certain level of reality and keeping to the certain level of humanity is so important. And skin tone is very much part of that storytelling. And I think it's really important how it all reacts, and I think we subliminally do see things which are fake, and I think I try to keep them as real as possible.
Yes, please. I mean, I did mention at the intro that you were also a photographer. Unfortunately, I didn't make a mosaic. It's a shame because it's very beautiful photography. I found it very interesting because you told me you grade your own photography. Would you say that that helped you to have a common language with a colorist now?
I always think it's like, first of all, what drives me crazy about the stills photography, they don't call it color grading, they call it retouching. But also retouching is to do and like change the blemishes on model faces or subject faces. And I never could quite, whenever I was trying to sort of learn about how to do a good color grading, which I'm still learning, it's actually quite, at that time, it was quite hard to find, and again, like skin tones and the moods, and what I do find that the more I do it, the better it is. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and who is a stills photographer who does his own stills, and he said that he learned stills grading from the colorist, and we were doing a project together with George Kay, and he said the same thing. And I must say that just to round this all up, obviously I think I do have an eye or a sensibility which I bring over to the color, but I am so privileged to work with just an incredible bunch of people who taught me about color and how they see it. And there is something about color theory, and I always think about, we are so different. There's 8 billion people in the world, and we all interpret the color in an entirely different way because we have a different perception of it, different interpretation, different cones and roads in our eyes, and our brain does its own thing. And it is so important to find colorists where you have similar language and similar interpretation of color and similar emotional approach to it. So in my stills photography, which is, I wouldn't call myself a photographer, but this is something which I find really quite, I find stills photography a way of sort of releasing a lot of sort of emotional life or sort of, daydream, walking around with the camera and feeling sort of, I hate photographing people on streets, so that's always quite good to do something where you hate. Getting yourself outside of the comfort zone. And I think it's like, I think I've learned so much from these incredible artists and technicians who actually brought me to their world and showed me how to approach color in an emotional way as well.
Okay. Very nice. I'd like to wrap things up. I thought we will have a bit of time for Q&A, but not sure about that. So if we don't have time, please come at the end and ask your question to Ula. Can you just finally tell us what you are working on now, or what's next for you?
So I think, so I was lucky enough to be invited to work, to do a second block of Blade Runner after Rob Hardy and Jonathan Van Token started, so hopefully that's going to come out this year. And I'm in the talks about 2 long forms, which I'm very excited about, and hopefully, part of the problem with the independent cinema, as much as I love it, it's quite fickle. So we are in that world of waiting and getting things tied in to hopefully production soon.
Amazing. Do we have time for one question, maybe? Let's do it.
I have a question. Hello. I was curious if you could share something with us. When you were talking about the color, is there something in your career that you were using, maybe outside the film, to realize what makes you like one shade of color or the other? Maybe like a medium of art that inspired you or made you realize why you like certain colors and why colors, the way they lined up in your film, have such an impact for you personally?
I mean, obviously within the film, which that's what you're asking, but in the film, Three Colors Blue is very much, was part of the sort of influence. But outside of it, I think photography and artwork, and I think part of the reason why this thing ended up in the Man in My Basement, I remember when I had, it was called Geniuses of Rome, and it was in the Royal Academy. There was work on Caravaggio and how Caravaggio has influenced the work. And the paintings are gigantic. And I have such a strong memory of their response to color and silvery skin tones and how colorful they were, how silhouetted they were, and how dramatic. But I think, every time wherever I go, I try to go to the museums. I went once to Reina Sofia, which is the Museum of Modern Art in Madrid, and I think it's just such an incredible way of seeing different artists talking to each other and how they influence each other. And in a way, it reminded me of the film industry, because we watch each other's films and we copy each other's works in a way, but we interpret them, because they sort of, how we exist is a community where we do get influenced by each other. And in a way, that's what they did as well. That's what artists do. They live within a community when they influence each other.
maybe one last question? No. Okay, we'll come at the end. Well, thank you so much, Ula. It was brilliant.
Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for coming.